Well, good evening. Can you hear me, Jason?
Oh, who's getting a bit fancy with the splashes of colour?
I think Jason's been spending a bit of time on the tools.
Right, very nice. What does the thing say at the top there? Website, right.
Oh, that's the Tasmanian drive.
Yeah, so this was the video that they had done that we then I got my guys at My Sport Live to just change it around to be an AEVA video rather than a AgFest video. Just this last little bit was the only change. And then we've, I think we've sliced it up. And looking at that, he's sliced it even further to take the AEVA part out of it at the end, because it sort of flashed up, become a member and all of that sort of stuff.
Right.
Okay, so now they haven't got the contract for the buses, have they?
I think they do.
Okay.
I think they do.
How many buses was it?
Ooh, don't know. It's a good question.
All right. Now, what bits and pieces do I want to cover? I will talk to the entire group about.
Bear in mind you're talking to part of the group already.
Yeah. So I might just talk to Jiva. Launch. And just remind people we're a founding member. I think the launch was actually on the on the 9th. Yeah, 9th of June.
Okay, we are just about ready to go.
How many buses?
I don't know. It's a good question. So, Jason, are we live?
Yes.
We're good to go. Excellent. So, hello everyone. My name is Michael Day. I'm the National Treasurer of AEVA. I'm also the Chair of AEVA New South Wales. And this is the second of our national webinars. This one with Luke Todd from TrueGreen Group, or TrueGreen Mobility, to be more precise. And the rough agenda for tonight is I'm going to open, and then I'm going to hand over to Chris Nash, our president, to talk a little bit about national. And then with any luck, we'll have Luke give his presentation. He hasn't joined us yet, but hopefully he's not too far away. At the end of that, there'll be a little bit of a Q&A, and also at the end, some general announcements, particularly for the New South Wales members, if you wanted to hang around for that. So just wanted to welcome you to this series. It's like I say, the second. It kind of started because, well, this COVID thing meant that we had to do things from home. And we found at the branch level that using Zoom allowed us to keep in contact with people without having physical face-to-face contact. And it also meant that we could reach out to members that couldn't always get to the meetings. Newcastle, as an example, there's a fair few of our New South Wales members in Newcastle that can't always get into Sydney to talk to us. So this was an opportunity, or it gave us the ability to connect with them. We've also got some members from New South Wales that have moved overseas, and we could talk to them. But what it also did was it gave us the opportunity to bring in some speakers, quality speakers, speakers that couldn't always get to us, but we thought had a great message for the greater audience, for the greater membership, like Luke, who's just joined us. So that's what kicked off the national webinar series, which is something that I think will keep going. I can almost guarantee we'll keep going because we've found some more speakers coming up, and we're hoping to run one every 1 or 2 months. We're just trying to find the right cycle and the right speakers and get into a bit of a groove. But like I say, the basic running order now will be, I'll hand over to Chris to talk about national, then Luke will give his presentation, bit of a Q&A at the end, should the technology work for us, and then some announcements right to finish. So, so Chris, I think it's over to you. Thanks very much.
Fantastic. Thanks, Michael, and welcome everyone to the national webinar number 2. Really exciting topic tonight with our guest Luke Todd from TrueGreen Mobility. But we'll jump onto him in a second. Just take you through a couple of quick things here from AEVA's national point of view. Several of you would have seen on the website, and if you haven't, please go and have a look, that the EV Global Alliance was launched on the 9th of June. Very proud to say that we were one of the, and still are one of the founding members of that organisation. It's a group of EV associations, drivers associations similar to us from countries all over the world. So absolutely delighted to be part of that launch and to see that get off the ground. We've been working hard as a national executive over the past number of weeks. There's been a lot going on. We've had quite a bit to do in New South Wales, as many people would have seen the various announcements. There's been some consultation going on there. We've been consulting with the ACT government. We've done some more stuff with the Victorian government and a bit with the WA government as well. Last thing to mention are the conferences, our national conferences that are coming up. So don't forget, we have Adelaide on the 29th of October. That's the Adelaide National Conference on the 29th of October. And then in an earlier time slot next year in April, so that's will be the national conference will be moving to the ACT. So we're very excited about both of those events and really looking forward to getting on with those. So keep your eyes out for information and bits and pieces. But you don't want to hear from me all night. You want to hear from our guest speakers. So it's with great pleasure that I introduce the CEO of TrueGreen Mobility, Luke Todd. Many of you will be aware of their movements recently. They're set up in New South Wales in preparation for the production of buses for New South Wales Transport. The announcements that have come out about bringing the BYD cars here to Australia, and to tell us all about it tonight, I welcome Luke. Luke, good evening.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you very much for the opportunity to present. Wasn't quite sure of the format, so I've put together a relatively brief presentation, but really interested to, I guess, dig into a bit of Q&A. We've been in the space for some time and are fortunate to have had some wins on the board and have a bit of deep knowledge in the area that might be of interest to yourself. So I might share my screen. I won't bore you with a PowerPoint presentation, but I do want to talk a little bit about our company, give a bit of a background as to what we've done so far, and hopefully somewhere in what I present there might be some interest. I'll focus on what we're trying to do in regards to local manufacturing, which is really a passionate subject of mine and something that we've been working on for some time, and I'll talk a little bit about the pitfalls and the possibilities about that. So without any further delay, I'll jump into the presentation. Apologies if it's a bit, some subject may not be of interest, but hopefully there's enough in there for us to talk about further. So just bear with me whilst I share my screen and get this working. Now, with a bit of luck, that should have worked. We all good?
All good. Well, I'll just launch in and say you can ask questions via the Q&A panel. So if people have questions along the way, please enter them into the Q&A panel, and we'll get to them at the end. Thanks, Luke.
Great, thanks. Yeah, certainly keen to see plenty of questions. So first of all, TrueGreen Mobility is a zero-emission transport company. TrueGreen is an entity that we've pulled together relatively recently to organise the multitude of companies that we have in our group, and we wanted to bring it under one banner with a very strong mission and clear statement to who we are in the marketplace, what we're here for, and what we're doing. And we're a zero-emission transport company, and that's what separates us in many ways from our competitors and some other entities entering the market, whether it be in the energy space, the transport, mobility, wherever it is. Our focus is purely on bringing the best global technology in the mobility space to Australia. And I'll step through a little bit about the history. This involves me personally, plus also the genesis of the business. Fortunately enough, I was the owner and CEO of a company called Carbridge, which was an airport busing company. We operated quite large busing services across the main airports within Australia, and this was a bit of a fortunate turn of events. I had a very good environment where I could test and develop electric buses, and how this all started for me as a journey was actually back in 2013 when we first were approached by two of our customers at the time, Qantas and Sydney Airport, when they wanted to improve their carbon footprint or reduce carbon, which was some of the buzzwords at the time. And we really had no way of doing it. We were quite a large polluter. We operated nearly 200 buses across 5 airports. and we went looking on the market, and there just simply wasn't a product available. So having built some other types of buses some time ago, we decided that we'd do a global search and find some good quality equipment and put it together ourselves. And that's where all this began, and that came to a head in 2016 when I launched the first 6 electric buses at Sydney Airport. For those of you that are familiar with Sydney Airport, they're the Blue Emu car park bus services, and very proud to say that they've been running in service daily basis, operating up to 18 hours a day since 2016. And recent check with some our engineering team found that those vehicles are performing virtually as good today, which is good 5 years on, compared to what they were on day one. So it's testament to the technology, and it's testament to the reason why the globe is now switching across to electric vehicles. But a little bit more about my history. So in 2018, I stepped out of that business, having become highly passionate about electric vehicles, having seen what they could deliver as far as, well, simple things: less breakdowns, cheaper to run, better for the environment. Better for the environment. And that wasn't just about the emissions. It was also about things like reduced noise, cleaner air. Once again, for those of you familiar with Sydney Airport, one of the early feedback points that we got was inside the precinct near Terminal 2 and Terminal 3, which has quite a bit of road coverage above, and it's quite a polluted area. Our buses travelling in there quite consistently reduce the amount of pollutants in the air. So it quickly became not just about the environment and climate change and all the things that one or two people can't change on their own. It became a very unique story about how we could make, or how I could make, and my team, a very direct impact on the area around us and where we were operating. So it was great, and it really set me on the path as to where we are now. So quickly, just to move on, since then we formed Nexport, which is our main entity, our trading entity. We've been working with the New South Wales government. We supported the trial of the 4 buses in the Leichhardt region, and that's led to the government deciding to transition their full 8,000 buses to diesel, from diesel to electric over the next 10 to 12 years. And then it's led a whole other states and territories to making very similar decisions. So for me, I've been in this industry, in the bus industry, to say virtually all my life, and in the EV space for 8 years, which makes me a little bit of a veteran, and fortunately been able to learn a little bit about how to do things along that journey, and very privileged and honoured to now be in a good position to make a bit of impact. I'll explain a little bit about our company and how it works, because this leads into something I'll talk about shortly, which is how do we reboot manufacturing in Australia, which is not only a political subject, but something that is really important, in my belief, to our future generations, and whether we become a consumer or a manufacturer or somewhere in between really is up to us. And we have a phrase inside our business which is called intelligent production, which is summarised by, we do whatever we can locally, but we also make sure that we bring the best technology from around the world, as opposed to taking something that might be not as good locally, because it's no good making something locally if it's not the best and latest technology and people don't want to buy it, or it's not fit for purpose. So as a company, this is a very complex slide, so I won't talk to it too much, other than to say the blue and the green squares are the key things here. What we are is a company that brings some leading brands. We find a way to do assembly, production, engineering, and compliance work, and then we have the right customers, with our headline customer being New South Wales government, and we deliver products to our customers. And why this is such a complex slide is because this we have a platform and a whole ecosystem that enables us to do that. It's taken me roughly 8 years to pull together, and it effectively allows us to bring product from factory, do as much production locally as possible, and then direct to the customer, which is leads on to a whole range of market disruptions that I'll touch on in a moment again. Just really quickly about our business, because each vertical is such a strong growth area, we do split up and we have divisional heads across electric buses, light commercial EVs, EV passenger cars, and hydrogen vehicles. Why I wanted to point this out was that these are the 4 main drivers of the EV space and zero emission technology as far as mobility and transport. The 5th that I purposely left off was autonomy. There's quite a few reasons, and I'm sure some of you on this webinar tonight have beliefs and some passion around autonomy. Personally, I do as well, and I certainly believe it has a space in our future. But right at the moment, we are going to go through, in my belief, between the next 36 months, an avalanche of transition to zero emission vehicles, and I believe autonomy will find its place sometime thereafter. So for us as a business, we do have great access to autonomous vehicles. Some of the best technology in the world is at our fingertips, but we've specifically decided to not focus on that and focus on what the market is telling us to do, which is bring the right priced zero emission vehicles to the market, and then look at autonomous technology when it's viable to do so. A little bit just quickly just about our buses and what we've done. We're the leading supplier of electric buses to us in Australia at the moment by default, because not many diesel buses are being purchased. It actually makes us the largest bus supplier in Australia, which is quite a nice outcome, considering we've had a relatively short runway to get to that point, and we have a very high performing vehicle. In put simple, what we did with our partner BYD, which is a Chinese-based powerhouse, we procure off them a chassis which has an extremely high quality, high powered battery, and then we build a very lightweight body on top of that chassis. And that has enabled us to build a bus that is outperforming our competitors considerably. And then we've also found, if we want to talk a little bit about what our magic sauce is, we found a way to ensure to maximize the regeneration outcomes of our vehicles. It's all about tailoring to specific routes, but just as an example, up to 37% of our driving range is generated through regeneration. So that means 37% of the kilometres that we're travelling is actually free electricity. It's coming off the technology on side the bus. It's not coming from a power source, a coal generation plant, or solar. It's purely being generated by the bus, which is something that's highly exciting, because it really is part of where technology will move, and that motion of the vehicle travelling is going to be something that there'll be some new technologies come to life in the coming years that we'll see that range increase. Just quickly as well, for the tech specialists that might be listening in, there's a whole debate in the bus world at the moment around AC and DC charging infrastructure, and it's really one of the major holdbacks to why we're not seeing a larger rollout of electric buses more quickly. We have been working on this project for some time, and we're launching to the market the first bus that actually has AC and DC charging capability on the bus itself. And most buses, well, all buses at the moment, you can either buy an AC or a DC current vehicle. We've created a bus that has the charging capability on the bus to accept DC and AC current, which we believe will be a major, or bring down a major hurdle, which is the cost of depot infrastructure upgrades. Yeah, I'll skip over this. Just as I said, at the moment we're doing extremely well. We have an 87% market penetration across the country. What we're seeing is all state governments leading and transitioning to zero emissions. New South Wales has been at the forefront of that. The ACT has also done some great work, and currently there's the live tender in the ACT. But we're really seeing a national trend, and this is based on not just the environmental outcomes, the cleaner air that electric buses can produce, but also the economics behind it. In simple terms, we've done more than 5.5 million kilometres of electric bus operations in Australia since 2016. So we have real data that proves that an electric bus year on year is $50,000 more cost effective to operate than a diesel counterpart. So when you start to talk about the cost savings that an electric bus can deliver compared to a diesel bus or any other form of technology that's out there at the moment, you start to talk about billions of dollars of savings for governments. I'll repeat that, billions of dollars of savings for governments. So in my world where I live daily, the conversation I've watched it transition over the last 12 months to being very much about environmental outcomes, where governments are now approaching us and our counterparts and other busing producers to talk about how much the buses can actually save taxpayers and bring cost outcomes to operations. So it's a really great outcome that we can be putting vehicles that are better for the environment onto our streets, but the main driver is actually the economics in behind it. And not many people would know that. I'm sure some of you would, but it's really been interesting to watch that when this journey started for me, it was very much about the environment and remains so. But the real turning point was when governments realised that they could save billions of dollars across the next 10 to 20 years by switching to zero emission buses. I want to just talk now about manufacturing and why this is such a big opportunity and why we're investing significant amounts of money into this ourselves and some of our colleagues as well. To transition all of our, well, close to 24,000 government buses that are operated across the country, over the next 10 to 12, maybe 14 years, it's a $16.6 billion industry. Now that's in jobs, that's in production, that's in procurement of materials, it's in a whole range of different areas. But when you start to talk about an industry that can bring $16.6 billion worth of economic benefit to the country, it becomes, and this is on top of the operation savings. So it's purely in manufacturing. It's one of the reasons why governments are really looking to the busing and truck sector to be the driving force behind what I believe will be a production manufacturing renaissance in the country, because the market is huge. It's quite simple, and the economics to build buses locally actually does stack up. And I'll move on just to share some open knowledge. Within our group, we have close to 23 products that we'll be bringing to market. So why I want to touch on this is people are seeing very low volumes of zero emission vehicles on the roads at the moment. But just in our company alone, we have a huge volume of different products that are going to come onto the market. This isn't even including our passenger cars, and we're just one of many that will be coming. So we're about to see a dramatic shift. I don't think people are fully cognizant of what is coming. Fortunately, I had the opportunity to travel on a regular basis pre-COVID and see what was happening around the world. And there really is a tsunami coming and transition to zero emission technology that will happen far quicker than what I believe any of our politicians realise. And we're quite proud to be one of the leading companies in that space. Talking about intelligent production very briefly, at the moment, we build our vehicles via a few channels. We have a domestic supply chain and an international supply chain. We're reliant on our international supply chain for various reasons. One being is that the economics of high volume production. Still, we need international suppliers to assist us with that, but we are moving to a sovereign production process. And those that might have followed our company a little bit would have realised that we've invested in some land in Mossvale in New South Wales. We plan to build what we call the equivalent of Silicon Valley in Mossvale, and that's a clean tech eco hub for not only our business, but hopefully many other businesses as well, where we can draw the best talent to this one precinct, where we can be building zero emission products, whether they be mobility or other technologies, and create a real renaissance in manufacturing. And we put a flag in the ground in Mossvale. We have 91 hectares, and we'll be making some announcements very shortly on when we'll actually be building product in Mossvale, which is extremely exciting for us. Getting close to the end of my presentation, but I want to talk I'll power through these so we can move into the Q&A. A sector that is really underrated, but I spent most of my time in the busing sector, but the light commercial vehicles, and we're talking 4.5 tonne and under, is really a booming market, with the e-commerce sector booming with home deliveries. This is an area that I believe we're going to see a huge amount of activity. Some stats that I just want to touch on: close to 70% of the vehicles that are on the road, and it's 3.4 million, by the way, that are 4.5 tonne and over. Apologies aside, it says 3.5 tonne, that's just a typo. 70% of these vehicles are 6 years or older. Now, when you start to dig into these stats a little bit more, what you'll find is a large amount of these vehicles are actually on a finance plan, so some sort of a leasing package or chattel mortgage or various different types of funding mechanisms. So with 70% of the vehicles being more than 6 years or 6 years old or older, what that presents is a huge market opportunity to bring a local production opportunity to build these type of vehicles locally, and actually fill this need where there could be as many as 2.2 or 2.3 million vehicles that can be replaced very quickly and on the road. So this is sorry, I'm getting a bit bogged down in stats here, but this is a really big opportunity that I think I wanted to point out to you as a group, because it is something that I believe will move very quickly and something that we're very focused on. And the demand from customers such as Australia Post, Toll, Woolworths, Coles, IKEA, Audi, I could name 1,000 different companies. There's a lot of companies that have made very bold statements, but they just don't have the right product to do that yet. And one of the interesting points that I wanted to make tonight is around why this hasn't moved so already. And that's a really simple answer. The reason being that the typical type of unit in this 4.5 tonne and under is your cab chassis, which is your cab with the chassis. The minute you start to put batteries onto that platform, it actually brings the payload of the vehicle to below what our companies like Australia Post, Woolworths actually need. So this traditional cab chassis style of vehicle is actually, in my belief, going to be a redundant type of vehicle very quickly as we transition to battery electric, potentially hydrogen vehicles. So as a company, we've built our own new vehicle, and this is exciting news for us, and this will be the first product that we'll be building in Mossvale, New South Wales. We've done the majority of the R&D and the prototype work offshore for economic reasons and to have access to the right technology and componentry. But very happy to announce that and this is the first place I've announced it, that we're bringing this full product and all of the production to Australia. So this is a vehicle that is a 4.5 tonne gross vehicle mass, but has a payload of 2.2 tonnes. So by changing the style of the vehicle and getting rid of the cab chassis style and having a monocoque body, that enables us to build a lightweight vehicle that can meet the delivery payload of all the customers that we speak with. And the best news is we can make these in Australia, and we'll be making these in Australia commencing the end of this year. So that image is a real image. That's a real product. We have 2 of them, and we'll be starting to produce them very shortly. So really excited about this. And to us, this is a product that can be made locally. We will make it locally, and we'll export it as well, which is a great opportunity for us, and hopefully the economical benefits that will come on the back of that. Just quickly talk about some things, and this is probably another topic for another day, but we're seeing a lot of companies around the world really trying to jump onto the bandwagon, as I put it. I won't name the company, but there's a lot of companies that are in development or about to bring out product. They bring out renders. They sit in the R&D space for around 3 years, and then all of a sudden you see them listing as a SPAC listing or something on the NASDAQ for unrealistic valuations. We as a company, and just by principle, are not that type of company. We actually have real products, and that's a big differentiation to some of the things that you're seeing around the world. So I raise this as a topic because it's something that's close to my heart, that we are actually building real product. We're going to be creating real jobs here in Australia versus some of our competitors that have a huge market valuation, but they're actually not bringing product to market. So they're leveraging the tidal wave of clean technology, but they're actually not really having great outcomes as far as putting product on the road. We as a company and as our principles are focused on actually building real product and driving the change to zero emissions. This is an example of what we'll be building in Mossvale. So we have our site plan ready to go, and as I mentioned, we'll be up and running in Mossvale very shortly, building the export DLX delivery vehicle in Australia. Quickly talk about passenger vehicles. This is a really exciting topic for many. We, as you know, I'm sure all of you know, we are shockingly behind the rest of the world. We're at sub 1% EV take-up via passenger sales. Through my study and the work I've done over quite a few years, the reason is we just haven't had the right vehicles on the market. We've had top-end vehicles like Tesla Model S at 120, 130,000. You've had the Model 3 Tesla, which has just dropped down to around 60,000, which is great to see. It was up as high as 80,000. And then you've had the Nissan Leaf, which is a good car, but has a low range, and is still sitting at a very high price point of 54,000. We've struck a landmark deal with BYD, the world's second largest EV manufacturing company. Our deal, what that is a co-collaboration. We have agreed to invest money into a production plant in one of the mega factories in China, where we have our own production lines building right-hand drive cars and bringing them to the Australian market. We have 2 products that will be coming out very shortly, and this has been in the press a little bit, but there'll be some more accurate and more precise details very shortly. And why I wanted to point out this slide is, as you can see, there's a bit of a sweet spot as to the science as to why electric vehicles haven't really gone through the roof, in addition to your typical reasons such as range anxiety, charging, and so on. But really, it's been about the price point versus the range. So the little, I guess, beigey looking colour square sort of thing on the right is where the sweet spot is. That's the combination between an acceptable range of 500 kilometres above and a price point of sub $50,000 or thereabouts. If you hit that sweet spot, that is going to be the tipping point where EVs move from aspirational to mainstream. We've been very focused on this for some years to get this right, and we believe that we have the 2 first products that will be coming to market are right in that sweet spot of that will make EVs mainstream, and very excited on that front. Moving a little bit deeper, and we'll close in a second. There's another major disruption that's going on, and one of the reasons why EVs aren't coming to the country is that the dealership model doesn't permit or doesn't facilitate EVs coming to the market. Some really quick stats for you. Roughly 35% of gross profit is made of dealerships is made up on their after sales activity. So that's post-sale activity. 35% gross profit margin is after the sale. When you look at the average across the country, dealerships' net profit is around 2 to 3%. So the minute you take away that 35% gross profit away from a dealership, the whole structure of a dealership with heavy infrastructure, plenty of cars sitting on the showroom floor, the whole thing crumbles. And this is why you've been seeing dealers push back to not want to bring EVs to the country, because it actually completely disrupts the dealership model. So we've seen this as an opportunity within inside our business, and we've created evdirect.com.au, which is a mechanism to bring vehicles direct from the manufacturer via a sophisticated e-commerce platform direct to the customer. And the money we save through that process, we then engage with our customers in a different way with experience centres, test drive days, and a whole range of other opportunities that we'll be bringing to light. But I just wanted to talk about that dealership disruption, because it's something that you're going to see in the next few years. Dealerships slowly start to close or change, and it's going to happen very quickly. I don't think people realise how quickly it will happen, because EVs and dealership models don't go together very well. In fact, they actually can't coexist unless they change dramatically. I might close it there because I've got 25 Q&As already, so apologies for dragging on a bit there, but I'm very passionate about what we do, and just wanted to share a fair bit about what we're doing and what we're embarking on. So thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Luke. I might launch in and ask a question because I can. I think you kind of answered it along the way, but my first question was, have you seen the tone of conversation about EVs changed over the last 8 odd years? And I think the answer is yes, because you talked a lot about the cost to own, the cost to run.
Definitely, yeah. I think we owe a lot of debt to Tesla in the fact that they really have done the hard yards in the early years, and as a community and as more business opportunities, the work Tesla have done, they've been around for more than 8 years, and they've done the hard yards to really push EVs into the market, and really they're the catalyst for what we're seeing now, which is a change. So I've very much seen the conversation change. People bought Teslas for various reasons, prestige, or the true believers in wanting to switch across to EV technology, but very quickly that's going to move to being mainstream. So yes, very much have seen a huge change in the tone of conversation about EVs.
Okay, then working through some of the questions in the Q&A, the first one here is from Florian, and he's asked about the different models being produced here in Australia.
So if we're talking about passenger cars or
well, your vehicles, and when I think that it was you've got 23 odd models that you had there listed. Are you producing all of those here locally?
So all up, and I'll break this down. So as far as passenger cars, so we won't be producing passenger cars in Australia for the moment. It's just not financially viable to do so. I'll give you an example. A low run or low production vehicle, even in a mega factory, and we're talking sort of sub 1,000 units per month, it costs around 40% more on that type of volume than what a high production vehicle of 10,000 plus per month would cost to manufacture. So in Australia, we just don't have the capability, let me correct that. We have the capability, we have the skills, but we don't have the capability to keep up with what's happening so quickly in China and other parts of the world. It's just not viable unless we're producing a high volume of vehicles we just won't be in the right price point where we need to be. So we're not looking at building passenger cars here in Australia, but we will be building buses. At the moment, we'll be building bus bodies. We'll transition to building bus chassis very shortly. And there's quite a few in the range on the images showed before. And we're building the light commercial DLX logistics truck here in Australia.
And that's where you can specialise, and there's a bit more of a market for those sorts of vehicles. You can specialise them for the local environment, or for local authorities, or for our use cases, and therefore there is a market.
Exactly, and it is a different type of production. So a lot of it is pre-assembled. So you're using let's call it sort of prefabricated kits that you put together. We're trying to build a lot of those kits locally as well to bring as much production to the country as possible. But because you're not talking about high volume production, you can actually build buses and light commercial vehicles here in Australia.
Got it. So another question here from Gary Storm is asking about collaboration with ACE, and you might say C or some of the others as well. Is there much collaboration in Australia in those those groups?
Look, I have a really strong view on this. At the moment, we're actually anybody in this industry, we're not competing against each other. Our real competition is internal combustion engine manufacturers and breaking the mold of what's been around for many decades. So yeah, I actually, I hope Greg doesn't mind, but I was chatting to Greg from ACE this morning. We talk on a regular basis. I'm a big supporter of what he's trying to do, and C not so much. They've gone on their pathway, but they're certainly. My view is that we're not competing against each other, but wherever possible, yeah, we do collaborate, we do talk, we do support each other, because we are at a pioneering point, and sometimes the road is tough. And it's nice to have people around that they're all like-minded,
on the same path, yeah.
On the same path, and wherever we can help, we certainly do. And likewise, I've been provided a lot of help from colleagues in the same industry.
So another question here from Rich Mitchell. He's asking, can the buses do vehicle to grid?
Yes, yeah. So this is a really exciting next phase of where this technology will go. So bus depots, truck depots, passenger vehicles, every vehicle that we have in our range, all but one at the moment, has V2G capability. And this becomes really important when we start to talk about mass bus depot rollouts and trucking fleets, because you've got huge amounts of battery storage on buses, and a lot of the times these buses are coming back half full, 3/4 full. So we're talking 300 kilowatts of stored power in the battery that can be used as a supplement to the grid. So yes, we V2G is a really key moderate component to what we'll see as we'll start to see an impact in the energy market as more and more vehicles become available to feed back into the grid. So yeah, great question, because it's really early days, but the technology is there, and we're seeing a lot of movement from energy companies to try and position themselves to maximise that.
You got to think that something like a bus with a lot of storage could be really helpful in times of emergency, or just for different types of load lopping and things like that. Anyway, I digress. Gary's got a question and possibly a business opportunity. He's asking about booze buses for the police. Could you build one, or would you be interested in building one? Gary, if you want to send me your contacts, send it to treasurer@aeva.asn.au, and I'll pass on your contacts.
We really are interested in doing those type of things. We're working currently with a company called Orange Sky, which is a charity. They work with the homeless. They're a really impressive bunch of guys. They get out into the streets every night with vans where they wash or provide a service for the homeless, where they can bring their clothes and wash them and have a shower. and we're working with them to build a series of vans that are, because the electric technology talks much better to the washing machines and so on. So things like booze buses and other types of mobile stationary units is a really good area where not only we are interested in supporting the community, but the technology of electric vehicles really does provide some new opportunities, because you're carrying around your own power supply.
So a question here from Jeff McDonald. He's asking about the range you quoted. I think it was about the consumer vehicles. Was it NEDC rated range?
Sorry,
I think it was. He's asking
passenger vehicles.
Yes, passenger vehicles.
Okay, so look, we will have a policy of our vehicles, that the ones that we're bringing to market. We've done a lot of testing and consumer feedback. All of our vehicles will have a minimum of 450 NEDC range that we'll bring to market. We believe that's one of the key points that has been holding the market back, and that's back to my chart before that has that sweet spot. You anything below 450 starts to put a bit of doubt in people's minds. So all of our vehicles will be 450 or above.
Interesting. I mean, my question, my observation, I thought 300 plus was probably the number. It's interesting that you've gone for 450 to 500. I guess that's through talking to people and a bit of market analysis and to get to that number.
Look, the number varies, but we are talking about mass transition. If certain people would be very comfortable with 300. Personally, in my daily drive, it's around 45 kilometres, so I've got no issues at all with a home charger, so no problem. But we believe for range anxiety to never be heard again, and that to be taken out of the equation, 450 is the marker.
Is the number. Got it. Right. Dean Oliver is asking about installing solar panels on the roof of the bus. I guess it would add a little bit, but probably not an appreciable amount of range or capability to a bus.
9% potential is the maximum that you can achieve. So solar panels don't work per se, but what we've done some work on is solar film. So that's solar film embedded into the roof of the bus. The roof profile enables we can get an extra 9% range out of the vehicles. That's really good. What's not really good is the price. To do it, it's just not economically viable. That may change in time, and definitely solar or direct source energy coming onto the vehicles. Sono in Europe is doing some great work there. I think it's a really interesting space to watch, but at the moment, we can get a 9% improvement in our range on buses, but it adds way too much cost to the development of the vehicle.
Right. So Andrew Zadra asks, I said that wrong. Is there a standard charge connector for buses? Is it like cars where we're starting to standardize?
Yes. So very much. So yes. So in the DC you've got your CCS2. And in the AC, it's Type 2 chargers. So it's very similar to passenger vehicles. A little bit of a different setup on the AC. You have dual nozzles, so you can get a bit more power flowing into the vehicle, but it's same DC and AC, CCS2 and Type 2.
And John is asking about the comparison between hydrogen buses and electric buses. I guess that's a multifaceted thing. It's the range, it's the technology, it's the infrastructure. There's a lot of differences between them, I'd guess.
There is, and we're the first mover in hydrogen as well. So we have a company in our group called Photon Mobility. We've sold the first 4 hydrogen buses to Transit Systems Australia, one of the largest operators in the country. They'll be delivered later this year. So we're deeply in the hydrogen space. Personally, I'm really keen to see where it goes. We from a cost point of view, it doesn't stack up at the moment, but we're watching and we're involved. One of the challenges is, and I won't bore you too much with the technicalities, unless I'm sure there's probably a few experts on this call that know more about hydrogen than I would, but the bar pressure rating that you can get with hydrogen at the moment is around 300, where we need to get that up to around 600, which is when you start to see the real strong benefits of hydrogen. So at the moment, the hydrogen buses that we're selling to our customers, which are about 30% dearer than an electric bus, actually only have the same range as an electric bus because of that bar pressure process. So that's a very layman's way of explaining it, but effectively, until we can overcome this pressure of what we can of the tanks that we have on our buses, which we will achieve. The technology is there, but just in low volume production, it's something we can't do. So,
right.
So our hydrogen.
I hadn't thought of that. It's a pure technical issue. It's not even the other all things we talk about between electric and hydrogen. There's a pure technical issue that's really holding them back.
It is, and it's fixable. But just when you've got to invest so much money to fix these or bring forward the technology, it's hard to do with the low volumes. But as we know, the government's supportive of hydrogen and has the federal government, that is, and we believe that that type of technology will evolve and will get better, and we're hoping to play a part of that as well.
Okay, so Andrew is asking about the savings. You're talking about $550,000 per year saving on a bus, and whether that takes into consideration the lack of fees a government might pay, as opposed to the extra fees a private company might pay. So it isn't an equivalent. Is that still around $50,000 regardless of whether you're government or private?
It's would be the same. So if I was to walk out today and buy an electric bus with ours or one of our competitors, and buy a Euro 5 high quality European built diesel bus, the savings in fuel, maintenance, and some other ancillary savings is on the figures that we've got based on 5.5 million kilometres of operation is around $50,000 per annum. And that's whether you're government or a private operator. But just the caveat on that is you do need to be doing more than 280 kilometres a day in that bus to achieve that level of savings.
Right. So Himi's asking about a detailed breakdown of all the costs involved. We're probably not the place for it, but Himi, if you send me your details, I can pass them on to Luke, and you might have a bit of a conversation thereafter.
Happy to do that offline, but yeah, probably.
Luke, just whilst while Michael's cruising through, can you tell us a little bit about what you see as your export opportunities?
So from
New Zealand, Indonesia, where?
So we with our agreement with BYD for the passenger cars, we'll be bringing vehicles into other right-hand drive markets in Southeast Asian region. But as far as what we'll be producing in Australia and exporting, the vehicle that I showed you before, this one, is the product that we look to export. So this will be built in Moss Vale, and we look to export to the UK, looking to export into India, looking to export into Thailand, and then we're also going to evaluate exporting into the left-hand drive markets of the US and Northern Europe and the like.
Okay.
So another question from Cameron is asking about where is the electricity coming from for the buses, which I guess it depends on the operators and how they handle it.
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's one that has some. It's not a perfect scenario at the moment. So grid upgrades and getting enough power to bus depots is the next frontier in many ways, and that's something that we could talk about for hours. But there's a lot of good companies that are in this space. Where we work closely with the St Baker Innovation Fund. They're one of our investors. They own a stake in Tritium. There's a lot of companies that are doing work in solving that issue, and it is very solvable. It just requires upgrade and cost. What has been missing has been the demand to actually make it viable to do so. So we've needed governments to make the decision to transition to electric buses to enable the confidence in the market to spend the money to upgrade depots to facilitate electric buses. Now, that electricity, where that comes from, obviously is coming from the main sources at the moment, which is coal and some cleaner fuels. My ultimate world is when we see completely clean, zero emission, end-to-end process. For us, what we can do is deliver the right vehicles and support some really good companies that are doing some really good work in depot upgrades.
Marcelo was asking about the skills to repair the buses. I presume you're going to have to find and train people to be able to fix these new types of buses.
Yes, great question. It's something very passionate about, because through this technology evolution, we don't want to see less jobs. We still want to see people working, repairing vehicles. But what happens is the skill set changes, and we've created a business inside of our business to facilitate this, called EV Campus, because at the moment technology is outpacing education and also policy. So for an example, if you build an electric bus at the moment, the level of requirements to put that through some testing processes are a little bit behind, but also there is no skilled, qualified, like you have in diesel buses. A diesel mechanic, for example, there's no dedicated qualification for servicing an electric vehicle at the moment. So we're very active in that space. We've created a business that we don't see will be a very business that's going to make a huge amount of money. But what it does do is it enables us to assist operators and people transitioning to zero emission to actually provide some of our knowledge through an online digital platform to help train and on a practical sense, what I see is that the current diesel mechanic at a bus depot, we want to see them become an electric vehicle engineer technician that can not only work on electric buses, but electric trucks, electric cars, and some new technology that will evolve in the coming years. So something very, very passionate about, because we don't want to see less jobs. We actually want to see people being upskilled and coming along on the technology transition.
Question here a similar question from Phil and from Christopher about when the passenger vehicles might be available. Looks like Christopher's already registered his interest and he wants to know when he can have his vehicle.
Yes, apologies for anyone that's patiently waiting. We have been working very closely with BYD to bring the vehicles as quickly as possible. Some exciting news is that we now have all of the dates that are locked in. Deliveries are going to commence March, April next year, but we will be taking official orders within the next 4 weeks. So we're getting closer. I know it's very frustrating. I'm as frustrated as anybody. I would love to have all of our vehicles here today, but it is a long, detailed process to bring high quality electric vehicles to the country, have them put through their ANCAP process and a whole range of compliance things that we have to do. So they'll be here very quickly. We do have a bit of a unique situation where we've actually got and doing a test on the E6 model, which is an MPV, a multi-purpose vehicle, and there's some of those available that we can actually deliver late next month. So if anybody's interested, feel free to jump onto evdirect.com.au and or send an email to sales@evdirect.com.au, and we can see what we can do. But really, as far as mainstream large scale rollout, we're looking at March, April next year.
So Jamie's asking about EV Direct and question mark, do you see something like experience and as being perhaps the future of EVs, at least in the short term? Because if the dealership model is dead, but we still want to get people into the cars, sit in them, see what they're like. Is there a way that they can physically do that? And is EV Direct the future, or is an experience centre or something like that viable?
Great question. So what EV Direct is a digital platform to enable people to do some research about the vehicles and to actually transact and purchase a vehicle. But the money we save by not having the dealership infrastructure, we engage differently with our customers. So I can announce that we're setting up a pop-up experience centre in the Canberra Centre in the coming weeks, or it might be a month or so with the COVID restrictions that we've got in Sydney at the moment. So we'll be deploying 2 of our vehicles into the Canberra Centre in the ACT, and having some skilled people there that you can go and visit. You can have a look at the car, you can touch and feel, see what it is, and that type of interaction with customers is where we'll be putting our sort of money into. So we plan to roll that type of model out to quite a few shopping centres, and that's where you'll be able to touch and feel the vehicle. Then you've got to look at test drives. For those that follow us and what we're doing, we've recently signed a large agreement with a company called Splend, who have a vehicle lease business for the rideshare operators. And one of the parts of the deal that we're yet to roll out, but really exciting, is that if we're looking to test drive a vehicle with our partner Splend, we're going to offer a service where you can book a test drive of the vehicle that you're wanting to consider buying, and we'll arrange through Splend that vehicle can come to your place, or a convenient meeting spot where you can actually meet with one of our Splend representatives, and there'll be a personalised test drive. So instead of going to a dealership, getting the hard sell, we'll have qualified people bring the vehicle to you, show you the vehicle, they allow you to drive the vehicle in a much more, let's say, relaxed environment, no pressure selling, that type of thing. And then when you're ready to buy, if you like the vehicle, you just go onto EV Direct and transact that way, and then the vehicle will be delivered once again by an experienced person that will show you how to operate the car properly. And it becomes people think by getting rid of the dealership you lose the human interface, but what it allows us to do is actually invest more into better human interface than what you can do in a dealership.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you very much for that. Yeah. Question from Di, an interesting question in that, asking specifically about the Tasmanian government. Have you been in contact about their buses? But really the question that piqued my interest here was, some people think that hills is a showstopper for electric buses. Comments on that?
Yeah, so the 2 factors that impact on electric buses most are hills and heaters. The 2 things. So you get extremely great performance on flat runs that are very hot areas, where, because air conditioning takes very little draw from the buses, but heaters, so the colder environments is where you see a bit of a performance drop. Generally with hills though, the vehicles, the way the technology is structured, it doesn't impact as much as what you would think, because it sort of locks. I'm trying to find a simple way to explain this, but effectively, because there are no gears, the vehicles are designed to lock in at a certain torque level and then power up the hill at a regulated rate. Now, it definitely does take more draw when you're going up hills, but equally, generally you find when you go up a hill, all of the topography work we've done is that on most occasions you end up coming down a hill as well, and that's where you get your regeneration outcomes. And that's why I was talking about where we get the high 30% regeneration rates. That's because we tailor our regeneration profile to suit certain runs. So if we know that we're working with a government that has a lot of hills in their service, we will tailor that particular fleet to be suitable for that topography. But yes, going up a hill does take more energy out of the battery.
Question here from Andrew. If full autonomous is out, do you think that autopilots and the like are in and important?
Look, this is a really good question and a really big topic to talk about. Probably don't have enough time. What we are investing in and what we're spending most of our time on is driver assistance and safety elements of autonomy. So all of our vehicles that will be released will have optimal safety outcomes as far as driver assist technology. Autonomy, autopilot, there's a ways to go, I think, before that's going to be widely accepted. My personal view, the technology is there, but unless you have all of the vehicles that are on the road autonomous, there are a whole range of human factors that come into play, and you've seen some issues. And unfortunately, some people get run over overseas, and some deaths, unfortunately, where there's been certain things that actually are very hard for autonomous technology to register. So I think there's quite a long way to go. As I said, 3 to 4 years before I believe autonomy will really find its place in the market. It's definitely going to happen. There's quite a few challenges for that technology. Ironically, one is we're looking at it on the screen at the moment. People that specialise in autonomy struggle with autonomy in Australia because kangaroos, as an example, because of the way they move, they bounce, they jump very quickly from side to side. That's one of the challenges, because kangaroos, ironically, are very difficult for autonomous vehicles to manage and manoeuvre and identify and work out what to do with.
There's a question here from David. There's along the lines of the savings and the typical payback period on something like a bus or one of those types of vehicles. I'm presuming it's much better than the equivalent diesel.
Yeah, so I can talk specifically about buses. So 3.5 years. So
wow.
So payback is 3.5 years. Simple as that. That's now proven. And we've been operating buses since late 2015 that demonstrate that, and that's why you're seeing governments move very quickly. When you've got a bus that's built for 20 to 25 years, if you're paying it back and becoming equivalent in 3.5 years, this is where I talk about the billions of dollars of savings that governments can achieve by transitioning to electric buses. So 3.5 year payback, and then you've got many more years of cost savings thereafter.
So there's a few more questions that I'm looking through, but I think we might try and round it out, because there's a kind of a good one here from Wolfgang, and he's asking, what does TrueGreen Mobility look like in 5 to 10 years? What's your North Star?
That's a good question. So we believe that we want to follow a path of bringing as much production to Australia as possible. That's one of our core mandates and core objectives of what we want to do. We've demonstrated that by procuring land in Moss Vale. So in 5+ years, I would like to see us being a leader in producing as many electric vehicles, or whatever technology it is, zero emission type vehicles in Australia as possible, and hopefully leading that manufacturing renaissance that is achievable with this type of technology. As I mentioned before, cars are difficult, but there is a lot of types of vehicles that we can produce in Australia. We're looking at one on the screen right at the moment. So in 5 to 10 years, if I was to say what TrueGreen Mobility looks like, I would like to say that we're leading the way in bringing as many jobs and manufacturing to Australia as possible, and punching above our weight on a global stage as far as exports.
Thank you. Actually, I might throw in one more question, and that is the political positions right now. Are they helping or hindering you? And if they were to change to be helpful, what would that be?
I've always had the view that governments can do so much, but really for transition to zero emission vehicles, the product has to stand up on its own merits. If we're needing government subsidies to support a mass transition to zero emission technology, I think that has a limited window of incentives, and it's great. We've seen some really good incentives come out from the governments of New South Wales and the ACT, and there are some motivations for people to buy electric vehicles and get a bit of a benefit, but in reality, that's a short-term fix. Technology has to be the key driver in economics. So as a business, we focus on bringing products to the market that are at price parity to our internal combustion engine counterparts, and that's why we don't chase down governments. I'm actually very proud to say that we've not received 1 cent of government grant money at all from any New South Wales, any state or national government, not 1 cent. Yet we're the leading EV company in Australia at the moment. So I think that's an indication that you don't need government, but we certainly do welcome governments to make strong decisions. And where we can really, if I was to advise governments, what I would say is make clean, clear, decisive decisions to enable companies and many other companies like ours to actually know and have confidence to invest in doing something good for Australia and creating jobs in Australia. Unclear policy is worse than having
none at all.
None at all.
Yes, no, we'd say similar things. Try and be consistent, have nice, clear policies, because that's great, very helpful, as opposed to something that's wishy-washy or grey. That's no help at all, and in fact is detrimental. So
exactly, when you know the rules, you can. There's a lot of innovation, a lot of entrepreneurs out there. Once you know the rules, you can go for it. When you don't know what the rules are, or you think the rules might change, or the laws from the government, that's when it becomes very difficult.
All right, thank you very much, Luke. I think we've run out of time. There are a few more questions, and if there's any, like I say, direct questions that you might have, send me your details, treasurer@aeva.asn.au, and I'll see if I can pass them on, and you might be with Luke. So thank you very much.
Everyone, thank you for your time. Look, what I'd ask is we try and communicate as much as to our friends and colleagues via our social media platforms. So feel free to look me up on LinkedIn or Facebook and log on to our accounts. I post as much as I can on what we're doing. So reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I'd love to continue to share as much information about what we're doing to keep you all informed.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, brilliant. Good on you, Luke. Really appreciate your time.
My pleasure. It's been great to share some of what we're doing.
Very exciting.
So just to sort of finish out tonight, there's a few announcements, mostly for the New South Wales members, because this in part was going to be the night for our branch meeting. So I thought I'd just get a few announcements out while we're here. So our upcoming events, of course, are off because of COVID effects, but we've got the AGM coming up. It's likely to be on the 10th of August, and it's going to be online. So really keen that everyone's there and participates, and there'll be more info coming out around that. And also, I think, Daryl, are you on and able to talk?
Yep, I am.
You want to mention about the spring event?
Yeah, I'm a member of Wind Zero down here in Wingecarribee, and we are trying to organize an event sometime in spring, but with COVID, of course, it's all a bit uncertain. But we had an Earth Hour a few months ago, and that was really well represented in terms of TOCA. They brought down a lot of Teslas from Sydney and the Wollongong. We had Nexport through Mike Levine, who lives here in Mittagong, just down the road from me. He supplied a T3 van and a Han. So it was well supported. So what we're looking at doing in spring is we want to hold what was originally going to be an EV rally in Goulburn, because that's where Angus Taylor is, but it's not a political thing that we're doing. It started off as an EV rally. I've been in contact with Pete Gorton in the ACT and Michael Day here in New South Wales to try and organise EVs to drive down to Melbourne on that day, sometime in spring. I've been in contact with Mike Levine from Nexport as well to see if he can supply some cars to come down. So Win Zero is trying to organise that. It won't be political. And in fact, we've had a couple of groups that were going to be involved that have now dropped out when they realise that it's not going to be a political thing. We've got Bunnings on site in Goulburn. They're going to supply battery appliances like lawn mowers, hedge clippers, chainsaws, that kind of thing. So we're thinking of changing the name from an EV rally to Electrify Everything. So that's what we're looking at sometime in spring, depending on COVID. So yeah, if we can get AEVA, TOCA, Nexport to provide the vehicles, because what we learned from Earth Day with Win Zero was no one sells electrical vehicles better than actual owners. And it was fantastic. Nexport through Mike Levine and TOCA providing those vehicles. And it really went off really well. And the public suddenly realized that electric vehicles can offer a lot more than what they've been told.
All good. So Daryl, we'll keep in contact. When the date's set and some of the details, we'll make sure everyone knows. And in fact, from a New South Wales branch, we might even try and make it one of our events and really rally behind it.
Oh, sorry. One other thing. Can I just say one other thing?
Yep.
Is there anyone that has a V2L vehicle that they could bring down? Because what we'd like to do is perhaps get some plain electric appliances that could plug into the vehicle. And show, yeah. So like a VTL thing, does anyone I think the Ioniq 5 does that, and perhaps is it the Kia? One of the Kias does that.
There's also a couple of Leafs floating around that.
But do they do V2L or do they do V2H? You know what I mean?
No, we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out, and
there are
we'll figure out
a few members, certainly in the Canberra branch. I know they've been displaying.
To do it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
We'll figure out, and we'll try and find something that suits. So
okay. Thanks.
More information soon. So anyway, wrapping that up, I'd like to thank very much Luke Todd for his presentation. Thank Chris for coming along, and all of the members for being part of and some great questions. Sorry I didn't get through to all of the questions. Milan, sorry I missed yours. I saw that you complained to me that I didn't get your message, but I couldn't find it. Maybe next time. If you have any more deeper questions for Luke, maybe send your details to me and I can pass them on. Apart from that, I think it's good night from us until the next event, which should be in around 2 months, I think, if all things go as planned. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Michael.
See you guys.
Thanks, Jason. Thanks for running the show.
All right, bye.